Donald Trump may finally be letting the transition process start. But if you think he's fully given up the fight overall, think again. And apparently first and foremost on his mind is making sure everyone knows he's the reason for the stock market hitting an all-time record today. As soon as people started talking about how the Biden transition was the reason for the rise, Trump cleared his busy schedule to set the record straight.
That's a sacred number, 30,000. Nobody thought they'd ever see it. That's the 9th time since the beginning of 2020. And it's the 48th time that we've broken records during the Trump administration. And I just want to congratulate all the people within the administration that worked so hard.
62 seconds, not one question. Interesting how much faster he was able to come out and talk about that than the 259,000 plus people who have died from the coronavirus on his watch. Of course, it was just last night that the president tweeted that he was recommending Emily Murphy start the transition process, referring to the woman charged with officially making that decision as administrator of the GSA, an agency that's supposed to be independent. But of course, there are a lot of things that are supposed to be in this administration, yet are not. And in that same tweet string, Trump vowed to keep up the good fight, saying he believes he will prevail, followed by a reminder today that the GSA does not determine who the next president will be. So that's promising. As is the report from CNN today that the man in charge of the Pentagon transition effort is Kash Patel, who the House impeachment inquiry connected to efforts to spread conspiracy theories about Biden and to pressure Ukraine into announcing an investigation into him. Regardless, the president-elect formally introduced his first cabinet picks this afternoon, including his longtime advisor Antony Blinken for Secretary of State, Alejandro Mayorkas, who will be the first Latino Homeland Security Secretary, Avril Haines, who would be the first woman to serve as Director of National Intelligence, and former Secretary of State John Kerry, nominated as Special Envoy for Climate Change on the National Security Council. And with his announcement, Biden made clear he's looking to make this a major turning point for the nation.
It's a team that will keep our country and our people safe and secure. And it's a team that reflects the fact that America is back, ready to lead the world, not retreat from it, once again sit at the head of the table, ready to confront our adversaries and not reject our allies, ready to stand up for our values.
Of course, the president does not work alone, relying heavily on congressional leadership to get things done. And I'm joined by one such leader, the newly elected Assistant Speaker of the House, Congresswoman Katherine Clark of Melrose, now the second highest ranking Democratic woman ever in Congress. Congresswoman Clark, good to see you and congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much, Jim. Good to be here.
Now, I read you're the second highest ranking woman in House history, number 4 overall in leadership, highest ranking Massachusetts Congresswoman ever. I know those are all bases for congratulations, but what exactly do you do as Assistant Speaker?
I think that's the question on everybody's mind. I can tell you that I am so humbled and honored to take this position. It is a position that is one that we changed the rules to make elected 2 years ago. So I'm the second person to be elected to this. And how I'm going to use this position is to work with our incredibly diverse caucus with really unparalleled talent to make sure that we are putting the focus directly on those pocketbook issues the American people care about. And it starts with crushing this pandemic and making sure that we are bringing our infection rates down, coming up with a way to distribute vaccines. And we're going to turn right to making sure that we are meeting this moment of racial and economic justice in this country and using the incredible team that is the House Democratic Caucus to deliver for the American people.
I want to start with coronavirus, which you mentioned first. It is a criminal act, as far as I'm concerned, that the last relief bill was passed 8 months ago as of this Friday. The conventional wisdom is the biggest obstacle are the Republicans. But your margin in the House was cut in half from 35 seats, I think, to 17. It may even be fewer. Isn't keeping even Democrats in line going to be a major responsibility for you and your fellow leaders?
The Democrats are unified. And let me tell you, that is not where my concern is, because I understand where this caucus comes from and the districts they represent. I had the chance back in 2018, when I was in charge of the Red to Blue program, to travel to districts very different from my own. But those issues that keep people up at night, are they going to have a next job? Will they be able to retire, keep their house, put their kids through college? Will they be able to have health care if they catch this virus? Those issues are the ones that this caucus has always been focused on. It's the ones we've been fighting for since we took the majority 2 years ago. And now we have a powerful new ally in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and we are going to show that we can govern. And if we keep those issues in our focus, the unity of this caucus is going to be what really fuels the change that we are going to see.
When you say, Representative Clark, that there is unity in the caucus, I'm going to play for you a comment that right after the election, Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger from Virginia made, followed by one from Representative Ocasio-Cortez a few days later.
If we don't mean we should defund the police, we shouldn't say that. And we need to not ever use the word socialist or socialism ever again. Because while people think it doesn't matter, it does matter. And we lost good members because of that.
We have assets to offer the party that the party has not yet, fully leaned into. Every single swing seat member that co-sponsored Medicare for All won their reelection.
Right.
And so the conversation's a little bit deeper than that, than just saying, anything progressive is toxic.
So that doesn't sound like a unified caucus to me. How do you bridge that divide?
I think we bridge that divide by doing exactly what this moment calls for, and that's focusing on the families at home. We are a broad, diverse caucus, not just in race and gender and ethnicity, but also in urban, suburban, rural, conservative districts that we flipped in 2018, those that would be held by a Democrat no matter what. And we have to respect and appreciate one another, because that's how we show the American people we respect and value them. And the strength of this caucus is not just diversity as a talking point, but that we continue to use it. And that's my commitment, is to continue to listen and collaborate. Take what some of our progressive members, and I'm proud to be one, know about motivating our base, connecting with young voters, expanding Democrats, and combine it with people who know how to win in very tough Trump districts. This is not something that hinders us. This is going to be how we deliver and how we make sure that we are moving forward with an agenda that has that diversity woven into it.
Speaking of Donald Trump, I firmly believe both his indifference combined with the GOP's lack of action has led to the deaths of thousands of our neighbors in this country. But in retrospect, despite their intransigence, would the House leadership not have been smarter to have taken an imperfect deal a couple of months ago that would have delivered some relief to small businesses and to individual families and unemployed workers in this country, rather than just rejecting everything that Steve Mnuchin put on the table?
Oh, well, I certainly disagree with your characterization of that. The question didn't come down to rejecting everything that was offered. The question is, who were we going to leave behind? When we went to them and said in Massachusetts, and certainly across the country, but particularly in Massachusetts, child hunger has gone up 150%. Yet what we heard from the administration, and there was silence from Mitch McConnell, was that increasing food programs was not an option. When we went and said, let's make sure that we are funding state and local governments so that we can help prevent the massive layoffs that we're seeing here at home of Massport workers, of really reducing our public transportation in a way that maybe take us decades to rebuild. They said, we're not interested. And what we couldn't do was just get relief without clearly knowing that it was going to go to the needs and meet the needs of the American people in this time. We've been at the negotiating table. We've been there since May. We came back in July and tried to save the post office and inject stabilizing funds into the childcare industry. We came back in October and lowered our offer again while including the airline industry. And yet all we're seeing from Mitch McConnell is continuing to reduce the amount he's willing to do, even as their own Federal Reserve chair says we cannot invest too much in the American people at this time. So we're going to continue fighting. And there are critical programs that are expiring in about a month. And so it is long past time that Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell come to the aid of the American people.
Speaking of investment, there are a lot of new initiatives that both candidates for president, including Joe Biden, you and your colleagues have talked about that I think have great appeal to the American people, whether it's covering some of the cost of higher ed. I know child care is at the top of your list. And obviously, as we see hundreds of thousands of women being forced to exit the workforce, we know how important it is. But, you know, Elizabeth Warren had that great line at the convention that child care is infrastructure for our families. She also had a 2% wealth tax that would have funded that and a number of other things, preschool. That won't happen, even if it turns out there's a 50-50 Senate. I assume you would agree. Eliminating the Trump tax cuts, as President-elect Biden has suggested, for those over $400,000 won't happen. Even if these ideas are embraced by the broad spectrum of the American people, where's the money come from, Congresswoman?
Well, I think it's where does the will come from? Just what we were just talking about. This is a moment with this pandemic and the economic fallout where we have been told by experts in the Republican Party that we need now to invest in the American people. And if we don't, what is the way forward? We can keep corporate tax rates nice and low, but if we don't spend money now, if we don't meet this moment, we're not going to have a recovery. If we lose our childcare industry, we are not going to have women and parents back in our workforce. If we do not address climate change with urgency, we are not going to have a planet and clean air and water. If we do not invest in our infrastructure, we are not going to have the roads and bridges and the broadband that this country needs. So it seems like an end-sum game to me the Republicans are playing. What is the purpose? They have been totally willing to throw away decades of talk about being deficit hawks and balancing budgets for supporting those who are already have great wealth. But now is the time to see the American people realize the breadth of this crisis and help them and build a foundation where we can restore this economy, which is the very best way that we can get out of this and start to put our economy and our country and the security of families back to work.
Just quickly, if you can, President-elect Biden has also made clear, at least through staff, he is not crazy about ongoing investigations into the behavior of Donald Trump while in office because he thinks it will further divide the country. Will the House end whatever investigations are pending of Donald Trump after January 20th?
At this point, I cannot speak for the oversight chairman, but I can tell you where the focus of House Democrats are, and that's addressing this pandemic, crushing this virus, and giving the tools and the resources that we need to rebuild our communities and set a new course. That's where our focus is. That's where it's going to remain. I am looking forward to seeing Donald Trump out of our headlines. And really, it's going to be a moment for Mitch McConnell. He's been hiding in the underbrush of the chaos that is sowed by this White House. But that's going to be gone, and he will be out in the open. And it's going to be up to the Republican Party and Mitch McConnell in the Senate to finally say, are you ready to work? Are you ready to answer the needs of the American people?
Out of our headlines and out of our heads, too. So, Congresswoman, two quick things before you go. In two articles I read about you when you were a candidate for Assistant Speaker, they said that you were occasionally referred to by colleagues as the silent assassin. What caused you to get that moniker that I wasn't aware of? What is it?
Well, I think that my mother and certainly my high school teachers would be very amused that anyone calls me silent. I think I have been very loud about the issues that I care about. But I do think it speaks a little bit to when women who have a more low-key leadership style that's based on listening, collaboration, reaching out even across the aisle, never mind within our own caucus, to try and move an issue forward, also managed to put together successful elections and internal campaigns. That catches a very few people by surprise.
Last thing for you, your new responsibilities would matter in normal times, but I would argue they matter even more in light of the fact that the three leaders ahead of you in the hierarchy are all octogenarians. Do you see yourself? Do you hope to be Speaker of the House someday?
I really never even thought I would be in Congress, never mind running for leadership. And I feel so privileged to get to represent my district, to be in this role in our caucus. But we have to be laser focused on meeting these immediate needs. This is not the time for, power plays or thinking about how those positions will sort out when they do. When people leave and move on to their next chapter in their lives and professional careers. But right now, I have an incredibly important position that is not only important to the caucus and our members, but really to delivering for the American people. And it's daunting, and it's both daunting and exciting. And I'm really looking forward to this next Congress and working with the Biden administration to turn course and set a new optimism again for our country.
I'll take that as a maybe. Congratulations and good luck, Congresswoman. Very, very happy for you.
Thank you so much, Jim.